Hey everyone, it's Nick with Two Brothers Comics. Today, Dustin and I want to talk to you about independent comics and why we think they're worth the read. So, independent comics, let's talk a little bit about kind of where we're coming from on this, why we think you need to give it more of a shot versus the Marvel DCs on your daily pull or on your weekly pull list. So, in our opinion, the kind of what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks has really kind of been about the stories behind the independents, whether it's Boom Studios. One of my favorites that have been coming out is, The Vault, specifically Heist. IDW's been putting out a lot of great stuff like Kanto. I know you haven't read it, but you should. What?
I said, I
say. Yeah. Well, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers is also supposed to be something worth reading too, so we'll see. But
we'll see
so
very soon.
So let's talk a little bit about kind of why we both agree on that, right? So from your perspective, why do you think you and I both are reading so much on our weekly pull list, more independents versus, Marvel, DC, more of the mainstream books?
Well, I think really where I started with it was, of course, like everybody here, we all know I love the Power Rangers books that Boom Studios does. So in the back of Boom Studios comic books, they're advertising for other stories they have coming out. And I started checking out a few of them, but then they started advertising for Once and Future. And it just looked really cool. Just the cover art on it. So I was like, all right, let me give that a chance. And then I read it, and how long did I, bark at you? You got to check this out. You got to check this out. And then you finally did, and we both liked it. So, that was a story that, kind of opened my eyes to like, okay, this is not just different reading material. It's a whole another realm of reading material because, like in that book, it's not a superhero versus a super villain.
Yeah, it's not superhuman.
Trying to save, the universe. It's a whole different kind of story with whole different elements involved. So it's just a different type of reading. It's just something to give you I guess a break from what seems to be continuous recycled stories. Every now and then, they will find a way to freshen up characters and stuff. And sometimes it's great. And then, sometimes it's like, this is still the same guy doing the same things. You don't get a lot of that with the independent stuff, I think.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. So one of the first ones, I kind of picked up on and I started reading over the last 6 months was actually Kanto, like I brought up a second ago. And it's a whole realm of different storytelling, right? I mean, we know Batman, we know Superman, we know Venom, or at least we thought we did, right? House of X, X-Men, all those things, we know that. But then you have things like Kanto or Once and Future, Marked, Undiscovered Country, a lot of these, Over the Ropes, Something's Killing the Children, a lot of these new stories that are coming out from these independent publishers. And really, honestly, independent it's not like they're small-time publishers. I mean, we're talking about Image from IDW, Boom Studios. These are some pretty large publishers, but they're not Marvel, they're not DC, so they're referred to as indie or independents.
Right.
But it's different because these new books that are coming out, these new stories, it's world building, it's world telling, right? So it's when we read the first 5 issues, we're getting this entire brand new world, this entire new story that we have no background on.
Fresh.
Exactly. And, you have things like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, again, woo. But even then, with the Shattered Grid saga that you've talked so much about, I'm sure that basically broke all the Mighty Morphin Power Ranger rules and kind of has come out and retold things. And with these independents, we don't necessarily have to have this world-class superhuman. It could be something as small as a little troll-looking thing, with a clock as a heart, right? Or these post-apocalyptic, stories. You look at The Walking Dead. What Robert Kirkman did with that. I mean, you know more about that than I do.
Right. Yeah, I mean
Go
that's a
ahead.
really good one to use as an example because if you look at the backstory on how that came about, he lied about that book.
Yeah.
They were 100% against a zombie comic book. It'll never sell. It's not going to work. So he's like, oh no, wait. He's like, I forgot to tell you, there's aliens, and that
Yeah.
oh yeah, okay, well that'll work. So who knows how long these guys sat around waiting. Yeah, okay. I wonder if the aliens are going to show up now. When are the alien? The aliens are not coming. But that book,
Yeah.
It changed everything, for Image from that point on because of the storylines and the characters and people, being able to grow to love the stories and the characters so much that it stretched on for, I don't even remember how long it was, but, then you get the TV series.
It was 193 issues.
Was it 193?
I think it ended at 193. I think so, because 192, and then the solicitations came out that something big was happening in 193.
193.
And it was just done.
And they actually had advertised something in 194 and 95. But yeah, I mean, so 193 issues later, and this has turned into a huge phenomenon to where it's one of the most popular,
one of the most
TV
profitable
shows
IPs. Yeah.
On TV. Plus, it has spinoffs coming off.
Yeah.
So, I mean, something like that, you're not going to get from Marvel or DC because they're not. There's no superhero involvement. There's not a character that was developed by Marvel and by DC, which is a great thing with the independents, because you're going to have guys who own their rights to their own stuff, and the creative, they have no creative they want.
Well, and so I was talking with the guy who did Over the Ropes, and basically he was kind of given free reins. He kind of said basically don't do nudity and we're good. Kind of what it came down to. Obviously, I mean, I'm sure there was some additional things, right? But not only that, they don't have the Marvel money. They don't have the DC money. They don't have Disney and Warner Bros. Backing them up. They have to work really, really hard to produce great content that's going to bring in readers to make that money. Now, the writers and things like that, I'm sure, are getting a lot more. I mean, that's why people go to Image or things like that, because of, it's writer-owned IP, right? But I don't know how IDW and some other places do it, but they have to work hard to put out that content, right? Whereas Marvel, you put Venom, you put Carnage, you put Batman, Superman, not so much, but you put these big name stories, it's going to sell. And I think that's where these independent comics, why their stories are so much better in a way of currently, right? Because as collectors, whenever we go and we collect back issues or old books, if you will, it's Marvel and DC. 90% of it's probably Marvel for the both of us, right? So when we're collecting, when we're buying old books, big keys, things like that, we're not buying independent big keys. I mean, if you do Walking Dead, some of these other ones, but really it's Marvel and DC. But currently, I mean, 90% of my pull list every week is going to be from an independent reader or an independent publisher, right? I mean, I'm sure yours is pretty much the same.
I think a good example, something to compare it would be with wrestling. I haven't followed wrestling in a long time, but for the last few years, I'd probably say close to the last 10 years, wrestling has changed where, you've got WWE, the big juggernaut system. And there's people that love that. They've always loved it. They're always going to love it. But then the indie circuits, these independent wrestling circuits are what people are they love because it's different. And the people there, kind of like you were saying with Marvel, they don't have the money behind them. So they've got to find other ways to make their product great. And I think that's what the independents are doing. But yeah, like you said, I mean, my pull list is 90%. I mean, I've got, I've got Something's Killing the Children, Once in Future, Over the Ropes is going on there. I've got Power Rangers, the Power Rangers Ninja Turtles. I mean, most of my pull list is, it's independent stuff. And there's more independent stuff that I'm looking forward to. I just started Folklords. That's a great one. You've enjoyed Kanto.
And that's actually one that was only supposed to be a 6 issues limited series. And I believe they're expanding that out to next year, which is great, right?
Right.
Enough people bought in, and now we're getting more of that content. Another one that has been phenomenal. It's Vault, a Vault book. It's Heist: How to Steal a Planet. It's only 1 issue in as of this recording, this date, and I tell you, it was probably one of the best books of the year. Okay, and it's Guardians of the Galaxy. It's Star Wars-ish. I mean, but within that 1 issue, I mean, this entire world, right? And when I mean world, I mean everything, whether you're talking about the culture, the people, why they're in the situations they're in, the people themselves. We got that within 1 book. We didn't need 15 different tie-ins, which are fine, but we were able to get so much in a book, and how they were able to do that, it's phenomenal. I mean, they introduced 5-6 characters. You have 2 main characters right now, little boy and then the big guy, but not to make this all about the 1 book, but they were able to do that with one issue. In the first issue, I can't think of another book that Marvel or DC has done where you got all of that, so, or I was that excited about a book even, really, right? So I can't wait for number 2 to come out. I mean, you had House of X, Powers of X, you've had the Absolute Carnage series, but even Absolute Carnage was a bit slow because of all the tie-ins. House of X, Powers of X went faster than I would have liked it to have.
And those were probably the best things that Marvel came out with this year. I mean, DC's Black Labels have been really good. There's been a couple of them that were kind of floppy, but I mean, Absolute Carnage, I really enjoyed the storyline. But as we both talked about, there was so many tie-ins. I mean, you tried to collect the tie-ins in the beginning. I don't know if you ever got all of them all the way through, but I tried to start. I ended up doing Deadpool and Miles for 3 issues, and I was like, I can't. I'm just going to read the main story, and that was as far as I could go because it was so expensive.
Well, what I ended up doing with a lot of the tie-ins is I would just go to the Damage section of the local comic shop where they put Damage books in from Diamond, and I would go in and flip through those and try to find dollar books for the tie-ins. I wanted to read the story, but when you have 10, 15 tie-ins at $3-4 a piece,
and now everything's getting to be $5 an issue. I mean, everything, and then House of X and Powers of X was great, but
don't get me wrong.
And we didn't have the tie-ins issues with those, but now they followed up with all the new series with Marauders and X-Men and X-Factor and X-Force and Excalibur and. So you have to have all those. You have to
Fallen
read all
Angels
those to be able to get the full story. And well, maybe you don't have to, but I would feel like I was missing.
And what I ended up doing, I got the first issues of all of them. I even got the second issues of most of them, and the story was so slow. So I mean, I dropped every one of them, but Marauders, because the story caught me that fast. And then X-Men, because
flagship
again, you kind of have to follow the main one. I'll give it a couple more issues, and I'm probably going to drop it unless some stuff changes. But you don't see that so much with the independent. And maybe to be fair, maybe we have a certain expectation with Marvel and DC for those characters, right? And maybe we don't have that same expectation with some of the independent books, right? I have no expectations when it comes to Kanto. No expectations when it comes to Once and Future. All I know is it's a great story, but that's also what makes it so great, isn't it? Right? So we don't have any expectations.
Yeah.
So we could absolutely hate it. No harm, no foul. Or we could absolutely love it, right? So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, you think it's because we have a unrealistic expectation for some of these books?
It's more about recycled storylines and characters and something new and fresh. House of X and Powers of 10 was fresh. It was something brand new. It was a change. Absolute Carnage. It was completely different. I mean, it was an awesome storyline. It was something different. It was something fresh. It wasn't Venom and Spider-Man, chasing back and forth, and then chasing Carnage. It was a whole system, that was put together, and you got characters that are brought in. From all over the place, and you get, a whole different storyline. So, for me, if it's something that, when I read the first issue and it's something that's like, whoa, okay, this is different. I have the perfect example.
Savage Avengers.
to me, this is kind of like
Yeah.
and I feel like this story does not get any love. I don't see a whole lot of people talk about it. To me, I kind of feel like this is
No, I mean, it did get
it
extended.
did get extended, and I kind of feel like, okay, this is kind of like the indie within Marvel, because it's not something that was, it didn't get the publicity like Absolute Carnage and the House and Powers.
Yeah.
It's not getting blown up all over the place. But it's different. They took a hodgepodge of the most literally savage characters they could, and they threw them in a book. And the first 5 pages out of the first issue, I knew I was going to read every one of these that came out. It's a great story, and it is completely different, and that's what it is for me. When I pick up these independents, I get something different.
Well, let me ask you this. With the Savage Avengers. So kind of going back just to play devil's advocate, right? So with Savage Avengers, what is the one character in there that pulled you to the book?
Well, there's two. And the reason why I say that there's two is because in the first couple pages of the first book, when Wolverine and Conan are fighting, it literally had me laughing out loud. The conversation going on in that fight. And it continues throughout the book.
But the reason why I ask you that, so Conan and Wolverine, right?
Right.
Okay, so Conan, he's not some superhuman cape-wearing individual. He's not somebody that we've ever really, you or I specifically, have ever really read a whole lot about. He's not as big of a character as you see Superman, Batman, any of the X titles. Spider-Man. Do you think it's because we had no expectations going in, and so when we read that character, we specifically were like, man, this guy, somebody we know anything about, but he's hilarious. Somebody that, do you think it was Conan that brought us in, and maybe he has a little bit of that independent kind of feel to him when it comes to character?
Yeah, probably, because honestly, I mean, I've read some of the other Conan stories, and there's I think there's 2 or 3 Conan comics out right now. And I didn't care for any of them. So, the way they used him in this book, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Pairing him up, with these guys, and this, like I said, when you put Conan the Barbarian, he's, like you said, he's not a superhero.
Yeah.
He's completely different. And, Conan's used to, when he puts that sword in somebody, they're done.
Yeah.
So when he throws the sword into Wolverine, and Wolverine gets back up and hands it to him, I'm not dead yet, bub. When I see that, and I'm cracking up, because Conan can't understand and comprehend how Wolverine's not dying.
Yeah.
So, and these two go back and forth throughout all the issues. So, if that was not a part of this book, I probably wouldn't have read this book further than I really did.
Yeah. And again, another one of the books that you recommended to me, and I listened and I picked it up and I started reading it. So I think it's only fair if you start reading some of the Canto and maybe go pick up Heist and some of these other books I'm telling you about.
I would like to say I picked all of them up. I went and found you the first 3 or 4 issues. Now, you did pay for them, but I went and found them for you and brought them to you, because I was that adamant that you needed to read it.
Okay, you can borrow some of my second prints and read them. Now, Heist is still on the shelf. I mean, I went into my comic shop, if they even ordered it to begin with. There's 2 here locally, and one had it, one didn't, and there were still both A and B covers sitting on the shelves, 3 weeks later. So if I go in there,
check it out.
Yeah, phenomenal story. And then you need to watch Dragon Ball, because you're missing out on some great action there.
Also, we talked about, back issues, stuff we consider to be, the collectibles, is all mostly Marvel and DC. I was doing a little bit of digging around and thinking about some of the stuff that I collect, and I really started looking, and honestly, there's a pretty good bit of stuff that I collect, like that I hold personally valuable, that are indies, and some of them, you got guys like Malibu.
Yeah. Do they even do comics anymore?
Series. I don't think so.
That's something we should look into.
I mean, Malibu. Right. I love these books. I'm collecting. I have a personal goal that I'm working on with these books. You had Topps, the trading cards, did the Jurassic Park books. I'm an avid collector of those. And then you had Chaos did the WWF books back then. I mean, so there, even in the stuff that I personally collect, there is indies.
Yep.
So I think the majority of what we're trying to get across here is, for the guys that have always been diehard Marvel and DC. We don't want to, there's no way that this indie books are really going to be able to match up and compare. There's stuff out there that is different. It's a lot different.
Man,
but there's some great stories and some great characters and some great artwork that you're missing out on if you're not giving it a chance.
Yeah, and a lot of it for you collectors. I mean, that's what we're about here. Collect your way. But if you're big into keys, there are some pretty big keys within the independent realm as well. I mean, you look at The Boys, phenomenal TV series. Walking Dead, we brought that up. Look on Netflix. You scroll through. There are tons of IPs that have been taken from comic books and have been optioned into Netflix shows or Netflix series or Prime series or many other ones, right? So, and if you think about it, and I watched an interview with Todd McFarlane, I don't know if you've seen this before either, but I'm sure you probably have. He talked about being an independent writer and why your IP is so valuable. If you take the top 100 books, or give or take, I think is what he said, 98 of them are going to be DC or Marvel. The other two are probably Spawn and The Walking Dead, right? If you're the 115th best writer within Image or within independent books, your IP is super valuable because it's not locked down by DC. It's not locked down by Marvel. So, and it's the same way with reading these books, right? You're going to get a lot of really good content, a lot of really good stories. And then, there are going to be some keys within those books. It may not be your traditional Hulk 181 keys because Hulk 181 is Wolverine's first appearance. I don't care what you say. Yeah, I know you get that. But yeah, so there's still a lot of really solid collecting, back issues, just like you mentioned, that can be done with a lot of independent stuff. So let us know in the comments what you think, right? What are some independent books you're reading? Let us know what you think about the whole thing. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share the video out. We're going to be announcing a giveaway soon. All right.
Yep.
And
once we get to 100 subscribers, we're going to do a pretty cool giveaway, guys. So, and as always, collect your way.
I'm going to shoot him a cabinet.
I don't know why you hate it. I don't know why you hate it when I do that.
I am a man of constant sorrow.